I bought the penthouse to escape them. For 3 years. I saved every cent, rebuilding my credit and my sanity in secret, terrified that my family would sniff out my success. I thought the heavy steel door was enough to keep them out. I was wrong. When I saw my parents in the lobby with 3 suitcases and my sister, I realized they did not come to celebrate my new home. They came to take it from me. The ink was barely dry on the closing documents when I stood in the center of the living room, listening to the most expensive sound I had ever purchased. Silence. It was not the empty, lonely silence of a dorm room or the tense, heavy silence of my childhood home in Glen Ridge, where a quiet room usually meant my mother was calculating her next explosion. This was the silence of ownership. I was 33 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was standing on ground that no one could pull out from under me. The penthouse was on the 32nd floor of the Aria building in Harborview. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, the city looked like a circuit board of gold and silver light. I had spent 4 years scraping, saving, and quietly investing in boring index funds while my friends went to Europe or bought luxury cars. I drove a 10-year-old sedan, I packed my lunch, I wore blazers until the elbows wore thin. I did this because I learned very young that in the Butler family, financial independence was the only shield that worked. I walked to the kitchen island, a slab of white marble that felt cool under my palms. Next to me sat the binder. It was a thick, black 3-ring binder that I had organized with the precision of a forensic accountant. Inside were the deed, the insurance policies, the receipts for the smart home security system I had installed yesterday, and a list of emergency contacts that notably did not include my parents. I ran my hand over the cover of the binder. This was my armor. I had told almost no one about the purchase in my family. Good news was not celebrated. It was harvested. If I got a promotion, my mother Diane would suggest I pay for the family vacation. If I bought a new car, my father Mark would ask to borrow it for a week and return it with an empty tank and a scratch he claimed was already there. And if I had a spare bedroom, my sister Chloe would find a reason to need it. So I kept my mouth shut. I moved in alone. For the first 2 weeks, I lived in a state of bliss. I established rules for myself that felt like rituals. Shoes off at the door to respect the white oak floors. No clutter on the surfaces. Every evening at 7 o'clock, I sat on my balcony with a glass of tea and watched the ferries cut across the dark water of the harbor. But the peace was fragile. I knew that. It started with the phone calls. My mother, Diane, was not a woman who called just to chat. She called with an agenda. Usually, her calls were sporadic, separated by weeks of indifference. Suddenly, she was calling every 2 days. "Sarah, honey, how is work?" she would ask, her voice dripping with a sweetness that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Work is fine." "Mom," I would answer, keeping my voice flat. "And where are you living now? Still in that little apartment on 4th Street? I tightened my grip on the phone. "Yes, it is fine for now." "Are you sure? I heard rents are going up. Your father and I were just saying that you really should be looking to buy. You have been saving for so long. You must have a nice little nest egg by now." I felt the trap snapping shut, but I sidestepped it. "I am doing okay." "Mom, I have to go. I have a meeting." Then came the questions from my father. Mark Butler was a man who had floated through life on charm and the sheer refusal to deal with reality. He texted me on a Tuesday afternoon. "Hey kiddo, just curious. If someone buys a condo in the city, do they check the deed for other property owners? Like if we wanted to co-sign for Chloe one day?" I stared at the screen. The question was oddly specific. I did not reply. 2 days later, he asked another one. "Does your building have a freight elevator? Or just the regular ones?" "My building." I froze. I had not told them I moved. I had not told them I bought anything. I had been careful. I checked my social media. Nothing. I checked my credit report notifications. Nothing. How did they know? The answer came on a Friday night in the form of a hysterical phone call from my sister. Chloe was 30 years old, 3 years younger than me, but she had mastered the art of eternal adolescence. She sounded breathless, her voice hitching with practiced sobs. "Sarah, you have to help me," she cried. "It is over. Todd kicked me out. I have nowhere to go. I am sitting on a curb. I am scared." I sat down on my velvet sofa, my heart hammering a familiar rhythm of guilt and dread. "I am sorry. Chloe, that sounds terrible. I need somewhere safe. Sarah, just for a while. Just until I get back on my feet. Mom said you might have space." I closed my eyes. There it was, the setup. "Chloe," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I am staying in a small place. There is no room." There was a pause. In the background, distinct and clear, I heard a man laugh. It was a deep, guttural laugh, followed by the clink of glass. "Chloe, are you alone?" I asked. "Of course I'm alone," she shrieked, the tears vanishing instantly. "How can you ask me that? I am on the street." I hear a man laughing. "Chloe, you are hearing things. You always do this. You always try to make me look like a liar. I am in danger and you are judging me." I took a breath. I was not going to play this game. I had prepared for this. "I will send you a link to the extended stay America on Harbor Boulevard." I said, "I have points. I will book you a room for 1 week. I will pay for it. And I will set up a meeting for you with a career counselor I know who specializes in urgent placement. She can help you find a job by Tuesday." Silence. The kind of silence that happens when a child realizes the tantrum is not working. "A hotel?" she spat. "You want to put me in a hotel like a stray dog?" "It is a nice hotel. Chloe, it has a kitchenette. It is safe. I do not want a career counselor. I want my family." Then the line went dead. 10 minutes later, my mother called. She did not say hello. "How dare you?" she hissed. "Your sister calls you in a crisis, a genuine crisis, and you try to pawn her off on a stranger? A career counselor? She is heartbroken. Sarah, she needs her sister, not a job interview. She needs stability." "Mom," I said, walking to the window. "I offered her a week of housing. That is not nothing. It is cold. Sarah, that is what it is. You have always been cold. You sit on your pile of money and look down on everyone. We are family. Family helps each other." I hung up. I turned off my phone. I sat in the dark and watched the city lights, telling myself I was safe. I told myself that the locks on my door were made of hardened steel. I told myself that the deed in the black binder had only my name on it. I was wrong. Saturday morning was bright and clear. I had planned to spend the day organizing my pantry, labeling the glass jars with the label maker I had bought myself as a housewarming gift. I was wearing leggings and an oversized sweater, holding a jar of quinoa. When the buzzer rang, I looked at the video monitor mounted on the wall. My stomach dropped so hard I nearly dropped the jar. Standing in the sleek, gray-tiled lobby of the Aria building were my parents. Diane was wearing her church nice coat, a beige trench that she thought made her look wealthy. Mark was wearing a polo shirt and slacks. Between them, they had 3 large suitcases, not overnight bags. Suitcases, the kind you take when you are not coming back. And they were holding a potted plant, a ficus. I stared at the screen, paralyzed. They should not have been able to get into the lobby. The outer door required a fob. As I watched, a young man in a concierge uniform I did not recognize stepped into the frame. He smiled at them, said something I could not hear, and swiped a card to let them toward the elevators. My heart began to race. I had specifically told the building management that I was not expecting guests. I had set my profile to private. I grabbed my phone. I opened the app that controlled my front door lock. It was locked. I checked the hallway camera. Ding! The elevator doors down the hall slid open. I watched on my phone screen as my parents stepped out. They looked around the hallway, admiring the sconces, the plush carpet. They did not look lost. They looked like they were arriving for a scheduled appointment. They walked straight to my door. They did not knock. I watched the handle of my front door jiggle. My father was trying to open my door without knocking. I felt a cold rage wash over me. It was a clarifying rage. It burned away the panic and left me with a sharp, crystalline focus. This was it. The invasion I had feared for a decade. I walked to the door. I did not chain it. I unlocked the deadbolt and swung it open. "Surprise!" my mother cried. Throwing her arms out, she stepped forward to hug me, forcing me to step back into the foyer. My father followed, dragging two of the suitcases. The wheels left tracks on my white oak floor. "Mom, Dad," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Robotic. "What are you doing here?" "Housewarming," my father boomed, grinning. He set the suitcases down with a heavy thud. "We could not let you celebrate this big milestone all alone. Could we?" He looked around the apartment, his eyes wide. He let out a low whistle. "Wow, Sarah, this place is incredible. You really went all out, didn't you?" Diane was already moving past me. She thrust the potted plant into my hands. "Here," she said, "for the living room. Although, looking at this light, it might do better in the guest room." "Where is the guest room?" She began walking toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms. "Stop," I said. I did not shout it. I said it with the flat authority of a judge. My mother stopped and turned around, her eyebrows raised. "Excuse me?" I put the plant down on the floor. "I did not want it. I did not invite you." I said, "How did you know where I live? And how did you get past the front desk?" "Oh, don't be so dramatic." "Sarah," Diane said, waving her hand dismissively, "we are your parents. We have our ways. And that nice young man at the desk, Mr. Coulson, he was very helpful. He understands that family needs to be together. Mr. Coulson." I filed the name away. "And the suitcases?" I asked, pointing to the luggage. Diane sighed, a long, suffering sound. "Well, we could not very well leave your sister on the street. Could we? Since you were too selfish to help her. We had to step in." I looked at the suitcases again. "Where is Chloe?" "Parking the car," Mark said. "She will be up in a minute. Parking the car." That meant they had a fob for the garage. Or Mr. Coulson had let them in there, too. I felt the walls of my sanctuary trembling. They were not just visiting. They were moving in. I took a deep breath. I needed to be smart. If I screamed, if I cried, they would win. They would paint me as the unstable, hysterical daughter, and they would be the calm, reasonable parents just trying to help. I needed evidence. I reached into my pocket and double-tapped the shortcut on my phone. The voice recorder app started running. I gestured to the living room couches. "Sit down," I said. My mother smiled. A victorious little twitch of her lips. She thought I was folding. She thought I was accepting the inevitable. She walked into the living room and sat in the center of my cream-colored sectional. She ran her hand over the fabric. "Velvet," she murmured. "A bit impractical, isn't it? Chloe will have to be careful with her wine." My father sat opposite her, looking uncomfortable but determined. I stood. I did not sit. I wanted the height advantage. I noticed something then. My father's eyes kept darting to the foyer, specifically, to the small black dome on the ceiling, my security camera. Then he looked at the smart lock panel on the door. He nudged Diane. He tilted his head toward the camera. Diane stiffened. She adjusted her coat. "So," she said, her voice taking on a formal, performative tone, "we are just so happy to see you. Sarah, we just want to spend some time together, as a family." They were acting. They knew they might be recorded. I decided to cut through the performance. "Mom, Dad," I said clearly, "I need you to tell me exactly what is happening. You brought suitcases. You said Chloe is parking the car. Is she planning to stay here?" Mark cleared his throat. "Well, honey, it is just temporary. You know she's going through a hard time, and this place, I mean, look at it. You have 2 bedrooms, right? And a den? It is too much space for one person. It is selfish to keep it all to yourself when your sister is suffering." Diane jumped in. "It is not just staying. Sarah, we thought it would be best if she settled in for a bit. A fresh start. She can help you around the house. She can cook. It will be good for you. You are always so lonely." "I am not lonely." I said, "I am peaceful." Diane ignored me. She stood up and started walking toward the hallway again. "I assume the master's at the end? We will put Chloe in the second bedroom, obviously. But does it have a walk-in closet? She has a lot of clothes. If not, maybe we can shift some of your things into the hall closet so she can use the master closet, just for her seasonal things. She was already redecorating. She was already evicting my coats. I felt a surge of nausea. This was not a request. This was a seizure. I stepped in front of her, blocking the hallway. No one is moving in. I said. Diane stopped. Her face hardened. The mask slipped. Sarah, get out of my way. No. This is my house. My name is on the deed. I pay the mortgage. I did not agree to this. Mark stood up. Sarah, be reasonable. Your sister has nowhere to go. She can go to the hotel I offered to pay for. I said, we canceled it, Diane shouted. We told her she did not need it because she has a sister who loves her. Do not make us liars. Sarah, you made yourselves liars, I said calmly. I saw the flash of violence in my mother's eyes, the urge to slap me. I saw her hand twitch, but she looked at the camera in the foyer, and she held back. Instead, she pulled out her phone. I am calling Chloe, she said. I am telling her to come up. I checked my watch. It was 2:00 in the afternoon. If I physically forced them out, it would be a scene. The neighbors would hear. The police might be called. My parents would love that. They would play the victims. Our daughter attacked us. I needed to de-escalate. I needed to get them out of the apartment without a brawl. And then I needed to seal the fortress. Okay, I said. Diane smiled. See? Was that so hard? I held up a hand. Okay, we will discuss this. But not today. What? Diane snapped. I said not today. I have a contractor coming in 1 hour to fumigate the guest room. I lied. I lied effortlessly. Fumigate? Mark asked. Yes. I found beetles. The carpet is being treated with chemicals. It is toxic for 24 hours. No one can sleep there tonight. My mother narrowed her eyes. She did not believe me. I smell nothing, she said. It is odorless until they spray. I said, look, you cannot stay here tonight. That is a fact. But I will make a deal with you. I walked to the kitchen island and leaned against it, projecting a confidence I did not feel. You guys go to a hotel tonight. I will pay for 2 rooms, one for you, one for Chloe. Tomorrow morning, at 10 o'clock, we will meet here. But if Chloe wants to live here, we are going to do it right. We are going to write down expectations, chores, contribution to utilities, house rules. Diane scoffed. Rules? She is your sister, not a tenant. If she lives here, she is a tenant. I said, those are my terms. Take the hotel for tonight. Meet me tomorrow to discuss the arrangement, or you can all leave right now and never come back. I held Diane's gaze. I channeled every ounce of the cold, hard woman she accused me of being. Diane looked at Mark. Mark looked at the suitcases. Fine, Diane said. She smoothed her coat. We will go to the hotel. But tomorrow, Sarah, you are going to treat your sister with respect. She has been through enough. We will see. I said. They left the suitcases. Oh, we will just leave these here, Mark said. No sense hauling them back and forth. I wanted to say no. I wanted them to take every atom of their presence out of my house. But I knew that if I fought on the luggage, they might dig in on staying. Fine, I said. Leave them in the foyer. They walked to the door. Diane paused with her hand on the knob. She looked at the lock. She looked at the keypad. What is the code? She asked. So we can let ourselves in tomorrow. I will let you in, I said. She smirked. A cold, knowing smirk. As if she knew something I did not. Have it your way. Sarah, see you tomorrow. She opened the door. Chloe was standing in the hallway, phone in hand, looking bored. She was not parking the car. She had been waiting right outside. Hey, Chloe said, can I use your bathroom? No, I said. The apartment is full of fumes. Mom and Dad will explain. I shut the door in their faces. I threw the deadbolt. I engaged the secondary lock I had installed myself, a heavy brass latch that could not be picked from the outside. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door and exhaled. My hands were shaking. I listened to their footsteps fade down the hallway. I heard the elevator ding. I was safe. For tonight, I walked back to the kitchen. I needed to think. I needed to call my lawyer friend, Maya. I needed to figure out who Mr. Colson was. I looked at the suitcases sitting in my foyer like unexploded bombs. I decided to check the mail. I needed a normal, mundane task to ground myself. I took the elevator down to the lobby. I avoided looking at the front desk. I did not want to see Mr. Colson yet. I went straight to the mailroom. I opened box 3204. Inside was a stack of junk mail, coupons for pizza, a flyer for a dentist, and a white envelope. It was addressed to occupant. I almost threw it away, but something about the return address caught my eye. It was a generic property management stamp, but the postmark was from 3 weeks ago. I opened it. Dear resident, this letter is to verify the residency of Chloe Butler at 3204 Harborview Drive, Unit 3204. Our records indicate that this address has been listed as her primary residence for the purpose of... The rest of the sentence blurred. 3 weeks ago. I had not even closed on the apartment 3 weeks ago. I was still in escrow. My hands went cold. They had not just decided to move Chloe in today. They had been planning this since before I even owned the keys. They had found out the address, likely through my father's prying or a breach of my digital privacy, and they had already started establishing a paper trail. They were trying to establish tenancy rights. In this state, if someone receives mail at an address and can prove they have access, it is incredibly difficult to evict them. I thought about the suitcases in my foyer. I thought about Diane's smirk when she asked for the code. I thought about the housewarming visit. It wasn't a visit. It was a raid. I crumpled the letter in my fist. The sharp paper dug into my palm. They thought I was the scared little girl who used to hide in her room while they screamed. They thought I would roll over to keep the peace. I looked up at the ceiling of the mailroom. You want a war? I whispered to the empty room. I put the letter in my pocket. I took the elevator back up to my fortress. I did not call Maya yet. First, I had work to do. I walked into my apartment. I walked past the suitcases. I went to the kitchen and opened the black binder. I turned to a fresh page. I picked up a pen. Step 1. I wrote, secure the perimeter. Then I picked up the phone. I was not calling my parents. I was calling the locksmith, and then I was calling a private investigator, because if Chloe Butler wanted to prove she lived here, she was going to have to get through me first. The next morning, the sky over Harborview was the color of a bruised plum. I sat in a booth at the Roasted Bean, a coffee shop 3 blocks from my building, watching the rain streak the window. Across from me sat Maya Granger. Maya had been my best friend since our first year of college, where we bonded over a shared hatred of communal bathrooms and a shared ambition to escape our hometowns. Now, she was a real estate attorney with a terrifying reputation for crushing landlord disputes. She was wearing a silk blouse and sipping an espresso with the precise, predatory focus of a hawk. She held the letter addressed to occupant in her manicured fingers. She read it twice. Then she looked at me. This is bad. Sarah, she said. Her voice was low. This is not just annoying family drama. This is strategic. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I knew it. I said, they are trying to establish residency. Maya nodded. In this city, tenant laws are incredibly protective. If someone can prove they have been living in a unit for as little as 30 days, or if they receive mail there and have a key, they can claim tenancy, even if they never signed a lease, even if they never paid a dime of rent, to get them out. You have to formally evict them. That takes months, sometimes a year. I stared at my coffee. A year of Chloe sleeping in my guest room, eating my food, bringing strange men into my home. While my parents guilt-tripped me into silence, they do not have a key. I said, Are you sure? Maya asked. I am sure. I have a smart lock. I gave them the code yesterday just to get them to leave, but I changed it the second they walked out the door. The physical key is in a lockbox inside my bathroom vanity. No one knows it is there. Maya tapped the letter on the table. This letter is dated 3 weeks ago. That means they started this process before you even moved in. They probably forwarded some of Chloe's mail to your address the moment the deed was recorded. Why? I asked. Why go to this much trouble? Why not just ask me? Maya gave me a pitying look. Because asking gives you the power to say no. Establishing residency takes that power away. They do not want your permission. Sarah, they want your property. She handed the letter back to me. Listen to me, she said. Do not let her sleep there. Not even for one night. Do not let her leave a toothbrush in the bathroom. Do not let her receive a single package. If she so much as orders a pizza to your apartment, she is building a case. I put the letter in my bag. I am meeting them at 10 o'clock. They think we are discussing house rules. Maya shook her head. There are no house rules for invaders. You need to be careful. If this goes south, they will try to make you look like the villain. They will play the victim card. They already are. I said. I left Maya and walked back to the Aria building. The rain had stopped. Leaving the streets slick and gray, I checked my watch. 9:45. I wanted to be upstairs before they arrived. I wanted to be standing in my foyer, controlling the space, when they knocked. But when I walked into the lobby, I realized I was already too late. Chloe was there. She was sitting on one of the velvet lobby chairs, positioned perfectly so the light from the chandelier hit her cheekbones. She was holding her phone up, filming herself. She was crying. Or rather, she was performing crying. I knew the difference. Real tears made Chloe's face blotchy and her nose run. These tears were glistening, singular drops that rolled down her cheeks without ruining her makeup. I stopped near the security desk. Chloe did not see me yet. She was talking to her phone screen. And I am just so grateful, she whispered, her voice trembling. You know, life kicks you down, but then you realize who really matters. My big sister. She has this amazing place, and she is taking me in. Finally having family who cares enough to share their success, it just means the world. She sniffed delicately. I felt a surge of nausea. She was framing the narrative. She was telling the world that I had already agreed, that she was already welcome, if I kicked her out now. I would be the monster who betrayed her own public promise. I tightened my grip on my bag and walked toward the elevators. I did not want to engage. I did not want to be a guest star in her reality show. Sarah, Chloe cried out. She jumped up, keeping the phone raised, panning the camera toward me. There she is, the best sister in the world. She ran toward me, arms open. I saw the red dot on her screen. She was live. I kept walking. I did not smile. I did not slow down. Put the phone away. Chloe, I said. My voice was flat. Oh, stop being so shy. She laughed. A brittle, high-pitched sound. She is just modest. Guys, she hates the spotlight. She tried to hug me. I sidestepped her, pressing the elevator button. I said, put it away. I repeated, I do not consent to being filmed. Chloe's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she recovered quickly for her audience. Okay. Serious mode. See? She is so protective. I love you. Sarah. I stepped into the elevator. Chloe followed me. As the doors slid shut, cutting off the lobby, she lowered the phone. She tapped the screen to end the recording. The transformation was instant. The teary gratitude vanished. Her face settled into a look of bored entitlement. She checked her reflection in the mirrored wall of the elevator. God, the lighting in there is terrible, she muttered. You need to tell them to change the bulbs. I stared at the numbers climbing on the display. Floor 10, floor 11. You are not moving in. Chloe, I said. She laughed. It was a dry, dismissive sound. Mom said you would be grumpy about it. She said you just need time to adjust. There is nothing to adjust to. You are not living here. She turned to me. She looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on my shoes. My bag. You have plenty of room. Sarah. Mom told me the layout. She said the master bedroom is huge. She promised me I could have the bigger room because I have more stuff. You are so minimal anyway. You do not need all that closet space. You will understand eventually. It is just fair. I felt the blood drain from my face. My parents had not just promised her a room. They had promised her my room. They had promised her my sanctuary. The sheer scale of the disrespect left me breathless. They viewed my ownership as a technicality. In their minds, anything I achieved belonged to the family collective, to be redistributed to the member who complained the loudest. The elevator dinged at the 32nd floor. I stepped out. "You are delusional," I said. Chloe followed me, humming a little tune. She acted like she had not heard me. I walked to my door. I punched in the code. I did not hold the door for her, but she caught it with her foot and slipped inside. My parents were not there yet. It was just us. "Get your suitcases," I said, pointing to the bags still sitting in the foyer where they had left them yesterday. Chloe ignored me. She walked straight into the living room and flopped onto the sofa. She kicked off her shoes. "I am starving," she said. "Do you have any avocados?" I walked to the kitchen island and stood behind it. I needed a barrier. "Chloe, listen to me. Mom and Dad are coming in 10 minutes. We are going to have a conversation, but you need to know right now that the answer is no." Chloe picked up a remote and turned on the television. She began flipping through channels. "You are so tense. Sarah, you need to relax. This is going to be fun. It will be like a slumber party." She was not listening. She was incapable of hearing the word no. She had been insulated from consequences for 30 years. The buzzer rang. I looked at the monitor. It was my parents. I buzzed them up. I expected a fight. I expected yelling. I expected my mother to cry and my father to bluster. I did not expect the catering. When I opened the door, my parents were standing there, smiling, but they were not alone. Behind them stood Robert and Linda Miller. The Millers were my parents' oldest friends. They had known me since I was 5. They were wealthy, judgmental, and pillars of the Glen Ridge community. Linda Miller was the kind of woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and spoke in a whisper that carried across a crowded room. And behind the Millers were 2 men in white uniforms carrying large silver trays. "Surprise!" Diane cried. She swept into the apartment, kissing the air next to my cheek. "We thought we would turn this meeting into a little celebration," she announced. "A family dinner. And look who we ran into. The Millers were just in town for a gallery opening, and we insisted they come see your beautiful new home." I stood frozen in the foyer. It was an ambush, a social ambush. Diane knew I would not cause a scene in front of the Millers. She knew I had been raised to be polite, to be a good hostess, to never air dirty laundry in public. She brought witnesses to ensure my compliance. "Hello? Sarah? Mrs. Miller said, stepping inside. Her eyes darted around the apartment, assessing the square footage, the view, the furniture. It is lovely, a bit modern for my taste, but very chic. "Mr. Miller shook my hand. "Congratulations. Sarah, your father tells us you are doing very well. Thank you," I said. My jaw was so tight it ached. The catering staff began setting up food on my dining table. Salmon, roasted vegetables, a tower of pastries. Diane began directing them. "Put the platter there. No, move the vase. Chloe, come help with the napkins." Chloe sprang up from the couch, playing the role of the dutiful daughter. "Yes. Mommy." I watched them take over my home. Within 5 minutes, my pristine sanctuary had been transformed into a banquet hall for people I did not invite. I walked over to my father. He was standing by the window, showing Mr. Miller the view. "Dad," I whispered, "can I see you in the kitchen?" He looked annoyed at the interruption, but he nodded. "Excuse me, Bob." He followed me to the kitchen. "What is this?" I hissed. "We had a meeting to discuss boundaries." "Sarah, relax," he said, grabbing a handful of nuts from a bowl. "We can talk business later. The Millers were in town. We could not be rude. Just enjoy the food. It cost a fortune. I did not pay for it." I said, "No, we did. Consider it a gift." I looked at him. He looked tired. Beneath the bluster, there was a grayness to his skin I had not noticed before. His hands were shaking slightly. We sat down to eat. I sat at the head of my own table, feeling like a stranger. Diane sat opposite me. Chloe sat on my right. The Millers on my left. For 20 minutes, The conversation was excruciatingly polite. We talked about the weather. We talked about the Miller's grandchildren. We talked about the traffic in Harborview. Then, Diane set down her fork. She dabbed her mouth with a linen napkin. "You know," she said, addressing the table but looking at me, "Mark and I have been doing a lot of thinking lately. About legacy, about family supporting family." I gripped my silverware. "Here it comes. Sarah has been so blessed," Diane continued. "This apartment, her career. She has always been the lucky one." I almost laughed. "Lucky? I worked 60-hour weeks. I drove a car with a taped-up bumper. And Chloe?" Diane said, her voice dropping to a tragic whisper. "Chloe has had such a run of bad luck. The layoff, the breakup, it is just heartbreaking." Chloe looked down at her plate, performing shame. "That is why we are so proud of Sarah," Mark added, "for stepping up, for opening her home. It is the moral thing to do." Mrs. Miller nodded approvingly. "It is wonderful." Sarah. So many young people today are selfish. It is rare to see siblings who stick together. They were boxing me in. They were using the Miller's approval as a weapon. I put down my fork. The metal clattered against the china. "Actually," I said, my voice clear and loud, "that is what we need to discuss." The table went silent. Diane's eyes widened. She flashed me a warning look. "Do not embarrass us." I looked at my father. "Why is Chloe really here?" I asked. Chloe looked up. "Sarah, don't start. I am not starting anything. I am asking a question." Chloe said she lost her job, but Chloe has not had a steady job in 2 years. She said she broke up with Todd, but I heard Todd laughing in the background when she called me. So, I am asking again, why is this happening right now? Why the urgency? Mark sighed. He took a long drink of wine. He looked at the Millers. He looked at Diane. "Tell her." "Mark." Diane said quietly, "She needs to know." Mark slumped in his chair. The charm evaporated. He looked suddenly old. "We refinanced the house," he said. I stared at him. "The house in Glenridge?" "Yes." "Why?" I asked. "You paid off the mortgage 5 years ago." "We had a party." Mark looked at his hands. "We took out a new loan, a large one, to help Chloe launch her business." I looked at Chloe. "Her business?" "She is an entrepreneur," Diane snapped. "She has a brilliant idea for luxury resale. She just needed capital for inventory." "And?" I asked. "And?" "The market turned," Mark said vaguely. "The inventory, there were issues. Logistics. It is complicated. Where's the money?" "Dad?" I asked. "Gone," he whispered. I felt the room spin. They had bet their home, their retirement, on one of Chloe's whims. "And the house?" I asked. Mark rubbed his face. "The bank is calling. We are 3 months behind. We might lose it." The silence in the room was heavy. Mrs. Miller looked down at her salmon, embarrassed. "So," Mark said, his voice rising, gaining a little strength from his own desperation, "that is the situation. We cannot support Chloe right now. We might not even have a place for ourselves soon. You have this palace, you have luxury, and your sister has nowhere." He pointed a finger at me. "It is your obligation. Sarah, you are the strong one. You have always been the strong one. You cannot sit here in your ivory tower while your family sinks." The guests nodded sympathetically. They were looking at me like I was a villain in a Dickens novel, hoarding gold while orphans starved. I looked at Chloe. She was watching me, her eyes dry and calculating. "Chloe," I said, "what happened to the inventory?" "What?" She blinked. "The luxury goods you bought? The inventory. If the business failed, you still have the assets. We can sell them. We can pay back the bank." Chloe shifted in her seat. "I do not have them anymore. Where did they go?" "It is complicated," she snapped. "You would not understand. You do not know how business works. I am a forensic accountant." "Chloe," I said, "I know exactly how business works. If you spent the money on inventory, show me the receipts. Show me the storage unit." She said nothing. She picked at her napkin. "She doesn't have it." "Does she?" I asked my father. Mark did not answer. So let me get this straight. I said, you gave Chloe hundreds of thousands of dollars. She spent it. You are about to lose your house. And your solution is to move her into my house so she can do it to me? Sarah! Diane shouted. That is enough. How dare you speak about your sister that way? I stood up. I am offering a compromise. I said, I walked to the sideboard and picked up a notepad. I will not let Chloe move in. That is final. Diane opened her mouth to scream, but I cut her off. However, I will pay for a consultation with a nonprofit housing counselor. I will sit down with you and look at the finances for the Glenridge house. I will see if we can save it. I will help you structure a repayment plan. I looked at the Millers. I will do everything in my power to help you fix this mess. But I have one condition. I placed the notepad on the table. Everyone signs a statement right now, a written statement that says, Chloe Butler does not live at 3204 Harborview Drive, that she has no tenancy rights, that she has no keys, and that she will never use this address for mail. I uncapped a pen and set it down. Sign it, and I will help you save your house. Refuse, and you can leave right now. Diane stared at the paper as if it were radioactive. I will not sign that. She spat. Why not? I asked. If it is just temporary, if she is just a guest, what is the problem? It is insulting, Diane cried. It is legalistic nonsense. We are family. You do not make family sign contracts. You do when family steals from you. I said. Diane stood up. She was shaking with rage. Her face was red. Get out, she told the Millers. Linda, Bob, I am so sorry, but we are leaving. My daughter has clearly lost her mind. She has let money rot her soul. The Millers scrambled up, looking terrified. They grabbed their coats. We hope it works out. Mister? Miller mumbled. Diane grabbed her purse. She marched to the door. Mark followed. Looking defeated. Chloe grabbed a pastry from the tray and stuffed it into her mouth before following them. At the door, Diane turned back. You will regret this. Sarah, you think you are so smart with your rules and your locks, but you are going to end up all alone in this glass box, and you will deserve it. They slammed the door. I stood in the silence. The apartment smelled of roasted salmon and expensive perfume. I exhaled. I felt like I had run a marathon. I began to clear the table. I threw the food away. I did not want any leftovers from this meal. I went to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face. I opened the mirrored cabinet. I froze. The contents of the cabinet were shifted. My face cream was on the wrong shelf. The aspirin bottle was turned around. My heart hammered. I opened the small, hidden drawer at the bottom of the vanity, the one where I kept the spare physical key for the smart lock, just in case the battery died. The drawer was empty. Chloe? She must have done it when she asked to use the bathroom yesterday. Or maybe she slipped away while I was arguing with Mark just now. She had the physical key. The smart lock had a key override. If she had the metal key, she could walk in whenever she wanted. The code did not matter. I did not scream. I did not throw things. I walked out of the bathroom. I went to the kitchen. I picked up my phone. I called the building management. This is Sarah Butler in 3204, I said. I need the emergency locksmith. Now. And I need a full log of every key card that accessed my floor in the last 24 hours. I waited for the locksmith. He arrived in 30 minutes. I paid him $300 to replace the cylinder and install a high-security deadbolt that could not be duplicated. I did not tell my parents I knew. I did not accuse Chloe. If they thought they had a key, they would try to use it, and when they did, I would have proof of attempted entry. I sat on my couch, watching the city lights. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Maya. Do not freak out, it said, but you need to see this. Attached was a screenshot. It was a video from Chloe's social media. The thumbnail showed Chloe sitting in a dark car, looking devastated. The caption read, When your own sister forgets where she came from, imagine having a penthouse and letting your family lose everything. Heartbroken family, betrayal, selfish. I clicked the link to the comments. Wow, what a monster. Cut her off, girl. You don't need that toxicity. Rich people are the worst. Eat the rich. Drop her address. We ride at dawn. I watched the view count tick up. 1,000, 2,000. They were not just coming for my home anymore. They were coming for my name. I put the phone down. I walked to the window. Diane had said I would regret this. She had said I would end up alone. I looked at the reflection of my empty apartment in the glass. I was not alone. I had the truth. And starting tomorrow, I was going to weaponize it. I opened the black binder. I turned to a new page. Step 2. I wrote, audit the enemy. If they wanted to make this public, I was going to make it evidentiary. I was going to find out exactly where that money went. And I was going to make sure that when the foreclosure hit, it did not land on me. I turned off the lights. I sat in the dark, waiting for the sound of a key scratching against a lock that would no longer open. The office of Nolan Pierce did not look like the office of a private investigator. There were no Venetian blinds slicing the afternoon light, no clouds of cigarette smoke, and no glass of cheap whiskey on the desk. Instead, it looked like the workspace of a high-end architect. It was located in a glass-walled building in the financial district, smelling faintly of lemon oil and expensive coffee. Nolan himself was a man of aggressive tidiness. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him with mathematical precision. He was a referral from Maya, described as the person you hired when you wanted the truth to be admissible in court. I sat across from him, my hands folded in my lap to stop them from trembling. I am not looking for scandal. Mr. Pierce, I said, my family is complicated. My sister is attempting to claim residency in my home. She is constructing a narrative that she is destitute and that I am cruel. I need to know the reality of her financial situation. Nolan nodded. He did not take notes. He just listened. You want leverage, he said. His voice was dry, like paper. I want facts. I corrected. My parents claim they are losing their home because they gave everything to her business. They claim she is broke. I need to know if that is true. I will start with a basic asset search and a background check on her recent employment. Nolan said, I will also look into this business of hers. Does it have a name? Lux Life Resale. I said, or something like that. She mentioned it once at dinner. Nolan tapped a key on his laptop. I will find it, he said. Give me 48 hours. I left his office feeling a strange mixture of relief and nausea. I was paying a stranger $200 an hour to investigate my own little sister. It felt cold. It felt calculated. It felt like exactly the kind of thing my mother accused me of doing. But then I remembered the missing key in my bathroom drawer. I remembered the smirk on Diane's face. I drove home. I took the long way, winding through the city, delaying the moment I had to walk into the Aria building. I felt like I was under siege. Every time my phone buzzed, my shoulders seized up. When I finally arrived, the concierge desk was manned by the regular staff. A nice woman named Elena. Mr. Coulson was nowhere to be seen. I exhaled. Miss Butler, Elena said, waving me over. You have a certified letter. You need to sign for it. My stomach dropped. Certified mail was never good news. I signed the electronic pad and took the envelope. It was thick. The return address was a company I did not recognize. Equitable Tenant Solutions. I took it upstairs. I did not open it until I was inside my apartment. With the deadbolt thrown and the alarm set, I sat at the kitchen island and slit the envelope open. Dear Ms. Butler, we have been retained by Ms. Chloe Butler regarding her tenancy at 3204 Harborview Drive. It has come to our attention that you have attempted to restrict her access to the property, despite her establishing residency through invitation and the storage of personal effects. Please be advised that under the Harborview Housing Code, any attempt to lock out a resident without due process is a violation of their rights. We are formally requesting that you provide a duplicate key to our client within 24 hours to avoid further legal escalation. This letter also serves as a request for administrative records confirming her move-in date of... I stopped reading. The room seemed to tilt. They were claiming she already lived there. They were claiming I was illegally locking her out. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of the letter. I sent it to Maya. Call me. I texted. Maya called 30 seconds later. Who are these people? I asked, my voice rising. Equitable Tenant Solutions? Are they lawyers? No, Maya said. I am looking them up right now. They are not a law firm. They are a consultancy, a shady one. What does that mean? It means they operate in the gray zone, Maya explained. They help professional squatters or tenants who want to squeeze buyouts from landlords. They send threatening letters that sound legal to scare homeowners into compliance. They know that most people are terrified of lawsuits, so they bully you into letting the person back in. They are lying, I said. She never moved in. It does not matter if it is a lie. Sarah, it matters if they can make you afraid enough to open the door. If you give her a key now, you are admitting she lives there. Do not respond. Do not call them. I stared at the letter. It was printed on heavy, bonded paper. It looked official. How did they find this place? I asked. How did my parents find a firm like this? They didn't. Maya said, someone found it for them. This is a specific tactic. Someone is coaching them. I thought of the concierge temp, Mr. Colson. I thought of the man's voice laughing in the background of Chloe's phone call. Maya, I said, I think I'm being set up. I know, she said. But we are going to fight it. Just hold the line. Sarah, do not let them in. I hung up. That night, the silence of the penthouse felt different. It was no longer peaceful. It was heavy. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The city lights cast long, shifting shadows across the room. I felt a familiar ache in my chest. It was an old pain, one I had carried since I was 7 years old. I remembered a day from my childhood. I had won a spelling bee. I came home with a blue ribbon pinned to my chest, bursting with pride. I walked into the kitchen, ready to show my mother. But Diane was not looking at me. She was holding Chloe, who was 4. Chloe had scraped her knee. It was a tiny scratch, barely a pink line. But Chloe was wailing like she was dying. Look, Mommy, I had said. I won. Not now. Sarah, Diane had snapped, not even turning around. Can't you see your sister is hurt? Go to your room. You are always so demanding. I had gone to my room. I had taken the blue ribbon off and put it in my drawer. I never showed it to them again. That was the pattern. Chloe's pain, real or imagined, always trumped my success. Chloe was the fragile bird that needed protection. I was the draft horse that needed to pull the cart. I rolled over in my expensive sheets. I was 33. I owned a penthouse. I had a portfolio. And yet, I was lying in the dark, terrified that my mother was angry with me. I was ashamed of that fear. I was ashamed that part of me, a small, pathetic part, wanted to call Diane and apologize. I wanted to say, fine, let her move in. Just love me. Just tell me I'm a good daughter. But I knew she wouldn't. Even if I gave Chloe the apartment, even if I signed the deed over to her, it would not be enough. They would just ask for more. I did not sleep that night. 2 days later, Nolan Pierce called me. I have the report, he said. Can you come in? I went on my lunch break. I felt brittle, like a piece of dried glass. Nolan placed a folder on his desk. He opened it. Your sister is not destitute, he said. I leaned forward. Chloe Butler has been operating a seller account on 3 different luxury resale platforms under the handle luxlife_Chloe, Nolan said. In the last 12 months, she has grossed over $80,000. $80,000? I repeated. That is more than she ever made at her administrative jobs. Grossed, Nolan corrected. But she is not keeping it. She has a pattern. She buys high-end handbags and shoes, often using buy now, pay later services. She sells them, collects the cash, and then defaults on the payments or claims the items were lost in shipping to get insurance payouts. Fraud? I whispered. Civil fraud. Mostly, Nolan said. But here is the interesting part. She has a storage unit. A storage unit? Yes, in an industrial park near the airport. It is registered in her name. I drove by. It is a large unit, climate-controlled. The rent is $300 a month. She is 2 months behind. But she just made a partial payment last week to avoid auction. She has money, I said. She has cash flow. Nolan said. But she burns it. She has disputes filed against her on PayPal. Chargebacks from buyers claiming she sent them fake items. She is running a shell game. Sarah, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And my parents? I asked. Do they know? Nolan slid a piece of paper across the desk. This is a transfer record from your father's bank account. 6 months ago. He wired $50,000 to an account solely in Chloe's name. 2 days later, that money was moved to a crypto exchange. Crypto? I blinked. My father thinks the cloud is actual weather. He does not know how to buy crypto. Chloe does, Nolan said, or someone helping her does. I stared at the numbers. $50,000. That was likely the equity from the house. She took their retirement, I said, and she gambled it and lost it, Nolan added. The wallet is empty. I felt a cold fury rising in me. It was cleaner than the fear. She stole from them, I said, and now they want me to bail her out so she can do it again. It looks that way, Nolan said. One more thing. That firm, Equitable Tenant Solutions? It is a shell company. The registered agent is a man named Trent Voss. I know that name. I said, he is a lawyer, a billboard lawyer. In a loss? Call Voss. He is disbarred, Nolan said, or suspended. At least, he runs these consultancies to skirt the rules. He is dangerous. Sarah, he knows how to make life miserable for homeowners. I stood up. I took the folder. Thank you, Nolan. I walked out of the building. I had the facts. Chloe was not a victim of the economy. She was a predator, and my parents were her enablers. I was about to get in my car when my phone rang. It was my father. Sarah, he said. His voice sounded thin. We need to talk. I am listening. Dad, not on the phone. You need to come to the house. Tonight. I am not coming to Glen Ridge. I said, please. Sarah, it is important. It is about the loan. We found some paperwork. We want to show you that we are trying to fix this. I hesitated. I had the report in my hand. I had the truth about Chloe. Maybe if I showed them, if I laid it out on the table, they would finally see her for what she was. Okay, I said. I will be there at 7. The drive to Glen Ridge took 40 minutes. It was a suburb of manicured lawns and colonial houses, the kind of place where people aggressively maintained the appearance of happiness. I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. The house looked tired. The paint on the shutters was peeling. The grass was a little too long. I walked up the front path. The porch light was burned out. I unlocked the door with my key. I still had a key to their house, ironically, and walked in. The house smelled of dust and old potpourri. It was silent. Mom? Dad? I called out. In the kitchen. Sarah! I walked down the hallway. The family photos on the wall seemed to mock me. Sarah graduating high school. Sarah graduating college. Chloe in a ballet recital. Chloe at prom. Chloe, always in the center. Always smiling. I walked into the kitchen. My parents were sitting at the round oak table. There was no food, just a stack of papers. Sit down. Sarah, Diane said. She did not look at me. She was staring at her hands. I sat. I looked around the kitchen. On the counter, half hidden under a pile of mail, was a flyer. I recognized the logo. It was a real estate agent's flyer. Coming soon. They were really selling. It wasn't a lie. I looked at the pile of mail. It was a mountain. Envelopes with red stamps. Final notice. Past due. It was worse than they had admitted. I looked at Mark. You said you wanted to talk about the loan. I said. Mark cleared his throat. He looked at Diane, then back at me. Sarah, he began. We are in a very tight spot. You know that. I know. I said, I know you gave Chloe $50,000. Mark flinched. You know about that? I hired an investigator. Dad, I know everything. I know about the crypto. I know about the storage unit. Diane looked up, her eyes flashing. You hired a spy? On your own sister? I hired a professional to find the truth because you lie to me. I said calmly, but let's not talk about that right now. Talk about the loan. Mark ran a hand through his thinning hair. Years ago, he said, when you were 22, just out of college. I waited. We were struggling then, too. He said, the market had dipped. My commission checks were light. We needed cash to keep the house. I did not know that. I said, we did not want to worry you. Diane interjected. We protected you. Mark continued. We needed a cosigner. Our credit was overextended, so we used your name. I sat very still. Used my name? I asked. You mean you asked me to sign? Mark looked at the table. Not exactly. You were away. You were busy with your new job. We didn't want to bother you. We knew you would say yes. You have always been generous. So we signed for you. The air in the kitchen seemed to vanish. I could not breathe. You forged my signature? I asked. My voice was a whisper. It was a misunderstanding, Mark said quickly, waving his hands. We intended to pay it off immediately. It was just a bridge loan, a second mortgage. We thought we could handle it. And did you? I asked. Mark went silent. We paid the interest for a while. He mumbled. But then things happened. Chloe needed help. The car broke down. We fell behind. How much? I asked. Mark did not answer. How much is the loan in my name? Dad? He swallowed. $150,000. I closed my eyes. $150,000. Attached to my Social Security number for 10 years. That explains the random dip in my credit score I fought 5 years ago. I said, the inquiry I couldn't explain. You told me it was probably a glitch. You told me to ignore it. We were handling it, Diane cried. We didn't want you to stress. You committed identity theft. I said. I opened my eyes. I looked at them. They did not look like monsters. They looked like pathetic, aging people who had convinced themselves that their survival justified their crimes. Does Chloe know? I asked. Diane hesitated. Then she nodded. She found out last year. Diane said, she was upset. Upset? I laughed. A cold, sharp sound. Or did she use it? Did she blackmail you? Is that why you gave her the $50,000? Is that why you are trying to force her into my house? Because she knows you committed a felony? Diane's face went white. It is not a felony, she shrieked. It is family business. It is fraud. I said. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out my phone. It was recording. It had been recording since I walked in the door. I need you to say it clearly. I said to my father, you took out a loan for $150,000 in my name, without my permission, and you signed my name to the documents. Sarah, put the phone away. Diane warned. Say it, Dad, I said, or I walk out of here and I go straight to the police. Mark looked at Diane. He looked at me. He looked defeated. We did it, he whispered. We signed your name, but we did it for the family. Thank you, I said. I stopped the recording. I stood up. Sarah, wait, Mark said, standing up. You cannot go to the police. It would destroy us. I would lose my license. We would go to jail. Then you better hope we can find another solution. I said, but what about Chloe? Diane asked. She needs a place. If you don't take her, she will expose us. She threatened to tell everyone. So that was it. The circle of blackmail. Chloe was holding the fraud over their heads to force them to bully me. I looked at my mother. You are scared of the wrong daughter, I said. I walked out of the kitchen. Sarah, come back here, Diane screamed. You ungrateful child. We gave you life. I walked down the hallway. I walked out the front door. I walked down the path. I got into my car. I locked the doors. I did not start the engine. I sat there in the dark driveway, gripping the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Maya. I ran the background check on your credit history deeper, like you asked. I found an old inquiry from a lender called First Horizon and Sarah. I pulled the digitized closing docs from the county clerk. The signature is not yours. The S is looped wrong. It looks like your mother's handwriting. I stared at the screen. It wasn't just my father. It was my mother. She had forged my name. My hands started to shake. Violent, uncontrollable tremors. I put my head on the steering wheel. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vomit. My entire financial life, The stability I had built brick by brick was built on a foundation they had already cracked. They had stolen my name before I even knew who I was. And they had done it while telling me I was selfish. They had called me cold while they were setting me on fire to keep themselves warm. I let out a sound, a low, guttural sob that hurt my throat. I cried for 5 minutes. I cried for the little girl with the blue ribbon. I cried for the woman who had eaten ramen for 3 years to save for a down payment, not knowing her parents had already spent her future. Then, I stopped. I wiped my face with my sleeve. I looked at my eyes in the rearview mirror. They were red, but they were hard. I was done being the daughter. I was done being the fixer. I started the car. I drove out of Glenridge. I did not look back at the house. I drove straight to the 24-hour copy center near my office. I walked in. The fluorescent lights hummed. I took out my laptop. I took out the black binder. I started a new section. Step 3. The indictment. I began to build the timeline. June 2015. Unauthorized credit inquiry. July 2015. Loan origination. $150,000. October 2025. Wire transfer to Chloe Butler. $50,000. January 2026. Attempted illegal tenancy. I logged every date. I uploaded the recording of my father's confession to a secure cloud server. I forwarded Maya's findings to my encrypted email. I was not going to fight with emotion. I was not going to scream at them at Thanksgiving. I was going to build a case so watertight that when I finally dropped the hammer, they would not be able to breathe without my permission. I worked until 3 a.m. When I finally drove home to the penthouse, I was exhausted, but I was not afraid. I walked into my apartment. I checked the lock. I checked the camera. I went to the window and looked out at the city. They wanted a war. They wanted to take my home. They wanted to take my name. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I was Sarah Butler, and I was going to evict them from my life. The fluorescent lights of the financial crimes unit were humming with a sound that felt like a drill pressing into my temple. I sat at a metal desk that smelled of stale coffee and sanitizer, watching a detective type on a keyboard with 2 fingers. I was filing a report. It was not just paperwork. It felt like I was signing a death warrant for the family I had spent 33 years trying to please. Name of victim? The detective asked. His badge said, Detective Miller. He looked bored. Sarah Elizabeth Butler. I said, Name of suspect? I swallowed. My throat felt like it was lined with sandpaper. Mark Butler and Diane Butler. Relation? Parents, I whispered. He stopped typing. He looked at me. It was a look I would come to know well, a mixture of pity and professional skepticism. Are you sure about this, Ms. Butler? Once we file this, it becomes a criminal matter. Fraud over $100,000 is a felony. It is not something you can just take back because you make up at Thanksgiving. I looked at the scuff marks on the linoleum floor. I thought about the signature on the loan documents, the loop in the S that belonged to my mother. I thought about the $50,000 my father had wired to Chloe. Money that should have paid their mortgage. Money that was now gone. I thought about the for sale sign in the kitchen drawer in Glen Ridge. If I did not do this, the debt was mine. The $150,000 was attached to my Social Security number. If they defaulted, and they would, the bank would come for me. They would come for my wages. They would come for the penthouse, I am sure. I said, I signed the affidavit. The pen felt heavy, like it was made of lead. When I walked out of the station, I expected to feel crushed by guilt. I expected to fall apart. Instead, as I stepped into the cool morning air, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. My lungs expanded fully. The tight band of anxiety that had constricted my breathing for a week loosened just a fraction. It was safety. I sat in my car and opened the credit monitoring app on my phone. I tapped the button that said, Freeze all files. Your credit report is now frozen. No new accounts can be opened in your name. I stared at the screen until the backlight timed out. I had locked the gate. They were on the outside. I drove to work. I worked at Crestline Advisory, a high-end management consulting firm. My office was a sanctuary of glass and beige wool carpet, a place where logic ruled and emotions were managed with spreadsheets. I was halfway through a valuation model for a logistics client when my personal phone buzzed. It was Diane. I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately. Then again. I put on my headset. I needed to focus. Then, a text message popped up on my screen. Pick up the phone. Sarah, I know what you did. I stared at the message. The police must have called them. Or perhaps the bank had notified them that the account was flagged for fraud investigation. I took a deep breath. I pressed the record button on my phone app. Then I called her back. Sarah, she screamed the moment the connection opened. Her voice was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Hello, Mom. How could you? She wailed. A detective just called your father. A detective. Sarah. He asked about the loan. He said there is an allegation of identity theft. There is no allegation, I said calmly. There is a report. You reported your own father to the police? You want to put him in jail? After everything we did for you? We raised you. We fed you. You stole my identity. Mom, you took out a loan in my name and you spent the money. It was a bridge loan. We were going to pay it back. It has been 10 years. You haven't paid back a dime. We are family. You don't call the police on family. You talk to us. You help us. I did try to talk to you. I said, I offered to help you save the house. I offered to pay for a counselor. You refused because I wouldn't let Chloe move into my apartment. Because you are selfish, she screamed. The word ripped through the speaker. You have always been selfish. You care more about your precious money and your fancy apartment than you do about your own flesh and blood. You are cold. Sarah, you are a cold, heartless woman. I closed my eyes. The words used to cut me. Now, they just felt like data points, predictable inputs in a failing system. I am hanging up now. Mom, do not contact me again. If you don't drop this report, Diane hissed, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly low register. I will make you sorry. Is that a threat? It is a promise. You think you can hide in that high-rise? You think you are better than us? I will come to your job. Sarah, I will walk right into Crestline Advisory, and I will tell your boss exactly what kind of person you are. I will tell them you are an ungrateful daughter who abuses her elderly parents. Let's see how long you keep that corner office then. I disconnected the call. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline. She was threatening my livelihood. She knew exactly where to hit. I looked at the clock. It was 11 in the morning. At 2 o'clock, an email notification popped up on my work computer. It was a calendar invite. Subject, urgent meeting. From Helen Ross, VP of Human Resources. Attendees, Sarah Butler, Maya Granger, External Counsel. My stomach dropped. Maya was not on the invite list originally. I had forwarded the invite to her immediately, and she had called Helen to insert herself. I walked to the HR suite on the 45th floor. My legs felt heavy. I was a top performer. I was on the partner track. I had never had a disciplinary meeting in my life. Maya was waiting for me in the reception area. She looked like a gladiator in a navy suit. She took my arm. Do not apologize, she whispered. Do not cry. You are the victim of harassment. We control the narrative. We walked into the conference room. Helen Ross sat at the head of the table. She looked uncomfortable. Sarah, please sit down, Helen said. I sat. Maya sat next to me, placing a leather portfolio on the table. Helen cleared her throat. We received some disturbing emails today. Sarah, from an anonymous account. They were sent to the general partners and to the client relations inbox. She slid a printout across the table. I read the text. It was written in all caps. Sarah Butler is a fraud. She is mentally unstable and is hoarding wealth while her disabled sister and elderly parents live in poverty. She has abandoned her family. Is this the kind of person Crestline employs? She cannot be trusted with client money. I felt the blood drain from my face. Disabled sister. Chloe had a slightly deviated septum she complained about, but she was certainly not disabled. This is a lie, I said. We assumed as much, Helen said gently, but the accusations regarding financial impropriety, we have to take them seriously. The email implies you are involved in something illegal. Maya leaned forward. She did not raise her voice, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 5 degrees. Ms. Ross, Maya said, Sarah is currently the victim of a sophisticated campaign of harassment and extortion by estranged family members. This email is a direct retaliation for a police report Sarah filed this morning regarding identity theft committed against her. Maya opened her portfolio. She slid a clean, stapled packet across the table. Here's a copy of the police report filed with the Financial Crimes Unit. Here's a copy of the restraining order application we are filing tomorrow. And here's a cease and desist letter we are sending to the IP address associated with these emails, which our investigator has already traced to a residential address in Glen Ridge. Helen picked up the packet. She looked at the police report. She saw the words, felony identity theft. This is a private family matter that has escalated into criminal conduct against Sarah. Maya continued. Sarah has taken every legal step to protect herself and, by extension, the firm. She is not unstable. She is under attack. Helen read the documents in silence. After a long minute, she looked up at me. Her expression had changed from suspicion to sympathy. I am so sorry. Sarah, she said, I had no idea. I kept this private because I did not want it to affect my work. I said, keeping my voice steady, I apologize that they have dragged the firm into this. Helen shook her head. Do not apologize. We will block the email address. Security will be notified that your parents are not allowed in the building. If they show up, they will be escorted off the premises. Thank you. Helen. We walked out of the meeting. We got into the elevator. When the doors closed, I leaned against the wall and exhaled a breath I felt like I had been holding for an hour. You were perfect. Maya said. They sent emails to the partners. I whispered, they tried to get me fired, and they failed. Maya said, because you had the paper trail. This is war. Sarah, and you just won the first battle, but the war was not over. I left work early. I needed to see Nolan. He had sent me a text saying he had found something urgent. I met him at a coffee shop near my apartment. He looked grim. The concierge, he said, skipping the pleasantries. Mr. R. Colson. What about him? His name is Rick Colson, Nolan said. He is not just a random temp. He is the cousin of a man named Evan Ridge. Who is Evan Ridge? Nolan turned his laptop around. This is Evan Ridge, he said. On the screen was a mugshot. A handsome man with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that looked too trusting. He is a confidence man. Nolan said. He has 3 convictions for romance scams. He targets women, moves in with them, drains their accounts, and vanishes. I stared at the face. I recognized him. That is Todd. I said, that is the guy Chloe was dating, the one she said kicked her out. His name isn't Todd. Nolan said, it is Evan, and he didn't kick her out. They are still together. I found photos of them at a bar in the city from 2 nights ago. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. He is helping her. I said, he is coaching her. Nolan corrected. He put his cousin in your building to learn the security protocols. He is likely the one who told them about the tenancy laws. He is not just looking for a place for Chloe to sleep. Sarah, he is looking for a new mark. If Chloe gets into your penthouse, Evan will be right behind her, and once he is in, he will strip that place to the copper wiring. My parents don't know. I said, they think they are helping their poor daughter. They don't know they are inviting a wolf into the sheepfold, or maybe they don't care. Nolan said, as long as Chloe is your problem, she isn't theirs. I stood up. I have to go home. I drove back to the Aria building. My mind was racing. It was a conspiracy, a grifter, a temp, a desperate sister, and parents who would burn me to save themselves. I pulled up to the building. There was a moving truck parked in the circular driveway, a large white box truck. My heart hammered against my ribs. I parked my car in the garage and ran up to the lobby. The scene was chaos. Chloe was standing in the center of the lobby. She was wearing a white sundress and a wide-brimmed hat, looking like a victim in a melodrama. Behind her were two large men in movers' uniforms, holding a dolly stacked with boxes. At the front desk stood Elena, the regular concierge. She looked flustered. "Ms. Butler," Elena called out when she saw me. "Thank goodness." Chloe turned. She smiled. A sad, brave smile. "Sarah," she cried, "I am so glad you are here. There has been a misunderstanding. This nice woman won't let the movers up." I walked over to them. I stood between Chloe and the elevators. "There is no misunderstanding." I said, "You are not moving in." Chloe reached into her purse. She pulled out a piece of paper. "But we agreed," she said, her voice trembling for the benefit of the 3 residents who were watching from the mailroom. "You sent me the letter." She handed the paper to Elena. "Look," she said, "it is signed. Permission to access and store personal property. It is Sarah's signature." Elena looked at the paper. She looked at me. "Ms. Butler?" Elena asked. "Is this your signature?" I looked at the document. It was a good forgery, better than the loan documents. The loop on the S was almost perfect. They had been practicing. I did not touch the paper. "Elena," I said, keeping my voice loud enough for the movers to hear, "that document is a forgery. I did not sign it." Chloe gasped. "Sarah, how can you lie? You gave it to Mom yesterday. You said I could move my things into the guest room." She turned to the movers. "She is just having cold feet." Chloe pleaded. "She is terrified of commitment. Please, just take the boxes up. I will pay you extra." The movers looked at each other. They shifted their weight. They did not want to be in the middle of this. "Start walking," I told the movers. One of them stepped forward. "Look, lady, we have a work order. We got a signed letter here. We just want to drop the stuff and go." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the police." I said. Chloe froze. "What?" she whispered. "I am calling the police to report criminal trespass and document fraud," I announced. I looked at Elena. "Elena, please pull my file. The closing documents from the purchase. Compare the signature on the deed to that piece of paper." Elena typed on her computer. She opened a file. She looked at the screen, then at the paper in her hand. She frowned. "The T is different," Elena said, "and the slant is wrong." She looked at the movers. "I cannot grant access," she said firmly. "This document does not match our records." The movers didn't hesitate. They knew the smell of trouble. "We are out," the lead mover said. He turned to Chloe. "You settle this, then you call us. But we are keeping the deposit." They turned the dolly around and wheeled it toward the door. "Wait!" Chloe screamed. "You can't leave. All my stuff is on that truck." She ran after them, grabbing the arm of the lead mover. He shook her off. "Get off me, lady." They marched out the automatic doors. Chloe stood alone in the lobby. The silence was deafening. Then, the performance began. She pulled out her phone. She hit record. She crumpled to the floor. She actually fell to her knees on the marble tile. "I can't believe this," she sobbed, aiming the camera at her tear-streaked face. "My own sister. She promised me a home. She signed the letter. And now she throws me out on the street." I stood over her. I did not move. "Stop it, Chloe," I said. Then, the automatic doors opened again. Diane marched in. She must have been waiting in the car. "You monster!" Diane screamed. Her voice echoed off the high ceilings. Residents were stopping now. A man in a suit. A woman walking her dog. They were watching. Diane ran to Chloe and wrapped her arms around her. "Shh, shh, Mommy is here," Diane cooed. She looked up at me with eyes full of hate. "Look at her," Diane shouted to the lobby. "Look at what she did. She lives in a penthouse and she leaves her sister homeless. She is sick. She is a narcissist." I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. This was the nightmare. The public humiliation. The reputation destruction. I looked at the residents watching me. I saw judgment in their eyes. They saw a crying girl, a frantic mother, and a cold, stone-faced woman standing over them. I felt a crack in my resolve. I wanted to run. I wanted to explain. But then I remembered the file in the black binder. I remembered the trust. I took a step back. I did not yell. I did not argue. I waited until Diane stopped screaming to take a breath. "You cannot move in," I said. My voice was calm, carrying through the lobby. "Because I do not own this apartment." Diane froze. Chloe stopped crying, the phone in her hand lowered slightly. "What?" Diane asked. I said I do not own it, not personally. I looked at Elena. Elena, who is the deeded owner of Unit 3204. Elena looked at her screen. "The Sarah B. Living Trust," she read. "Exactly," I said. I turned back to my parents. "This apartment is held in an irrevocable trust." I lied. Well, it was a half-lie. It was in a trust, but I was the trustee. However, the trust documents, which I had drafted with Maya's help specifically for asset protection, had a clause. The trust has strict occupancy rules. I said, no one can reside in the property for more than 3 consecutive nights without the unanimous written consent of the Board of Trustees. I pointed to the ceiling. "It is not up to me. Mom, it is a legal entity. If I let you move in, the trust can evict me. I lose the home." Diane stared at me. Her brain was trying to process this new obstacle. A trust? A board? It was bureaucracy. It was the one thing she could not manipulate with tears. She could not bully a trust. "So even if I wanted to help you," I said, "I can't. My hands are tied." It was the perfect defense. I had turned their own weapon, bureaucracy, against them. Chloe stood up. She wiped her eyes. The tears vanished instantly. "You are lying," she said. "Check the public records." I said. Diane looked at me. She looked at the luxury lobby, the concierge, the security cameras. She realized she had lost. The physical invasion had failed. The movers were gone. The key didn't work. The guilt trip had bounced off a legal shield. Her face changed. The rage drained away, replaced by something colder, something reptilian. It was the look of a general who realizes the frontal assault has failed and decides to burn the fields instead. She stepped close to me. She invaded my personal space. She smelled of floral perfume and desperation. "Fine," she whispered. She smoothed her coat. "If we can't take the home," she said, her voice low and steady, "we will take your name." She stepped back. "Come on. Chloe," she said loudly. "We don't want to stay where we aren't wanted." They walked to the door. Chloe paused. She lifted her phone one last time. "Part 2 coming soon. Guys," she said to the camera, "you won't believe what I found out about my sister's past." They walked out into the bright afternoon light. I stood in the lobby. My knees felt like water. Elena looked at me. "Are you okay?" "Ms. Butler?" she asked. I nodded. "I am fine." "Elena, thank you." I walked to the elevator. I rode it up to the 32nd floor. I walked into my apartment. I locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt. I set the alarm. I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hand was shaking so hard the water spilled onto the marble counter. "We will take your name." I knew what they meant. They were going to sue me, or they were going to invent a scandal so big it would destroy my career. They were going to leak the identity theft narrative in reverse, claiming I had stolen from them. I wiped up the water. I opened the black binder. I turned to the section labeled Legal. I picked up my pen. Step 4. I wrote, "The counterattack." I was done playing defense. I was done hiding behind trusts and locks. If they wanted my name, they were going to have to drag it through the mud, but I was going to make sure that when the mud settled, they were the ones who drowned in it. I picked up my phone and called Maya. "File the suit." I said, "Which one?" Maya asked. "The restraining order?" "No." I said, "The partition action on the Glenridge house and the fraud complaint. File it all." "Are you sure?" Maya asked. "Once we do this, there is no going back." I looked at the empty spot in the foyer where their suitcases had been. "I am sure." I said, "Burn it down." The envelope was taped to my front door. It was not a polite letter this time. It was a thick packet of legal-sized paper, folded in half and secured with blue masking tape. I stood in the hallway of the Aria building, holding my groceries in one hand and ripping the tape with the other. My neighbors. A quiet couple named the Steinbergs walked past me with their dachshund. They gave me a sympathetic smile, the kind you give to someone whose life is visibly leaking into the public corridor. I walked inside, locked the door, and dropped the groceries on the floor. I sat on the foyer bench and began to read. Superior Court of the State of Washington, Chloe Butler, Plaintiff, versus Sarah Butler, Defendant, Civil Action for Damages, Promissory Estoppel, and Intentional Infliction of Emotional Distress. I felt a strange, buzzing sensation in my ears. I turned the page. Plaintiff alleges that defendant, Sarah Butler, entered into a verbal contract on January 28th, promising housing and financial support to plaintiff in exchange for familial caretaking services. Plaintiff relied on this promise to her detriment, turning down other housing opportunities and incurring moving costs. It was a lie, a bold, verifiable lie. But that was not the part that made my hands go cold. Attached to the complaint were 2 affidavits, sworn statements, signed under penalty of perjury. Affidavit of Diane Butler. I read my mother's words. I, Diane Butler, being duly sworn, do depose and say, on the morning of January 28th, I witnessed my daughter, Sarah Butler, explicitly state to her sister, Chloe, that the guest suite in the Penthouse was hers to use for an indefinite period. Sarah gave us the security codes and accepted personal property into the home. Her subsequent eviction of Chloe was malicious and sudden. And then, affidavit of Mark Butler. I, Mark Butler, confirmed that Sarah Butler agreed to house her sister to help the family during a financial crisis. She provided keys and access, then changed the locks without notice, causing severe distress. I put the papers down on the bench. I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt a hollow, aching silence open up inside me. They had lied. They had walked into a lawyer's office, raised their right hands, and lied to a court of law. They were willing to commit perjury, a crime that could send them to jail, just to force me to give Chloe a bedroom. I realized then that I had been mourning the wrong thing. For the last week, I had been mourning the loss of their approval. I had been grieving the fact that they were angry with me. But reading those signatures, I realized I needed to grieve something else. I needed to grieve the death of the hope that they were decent people. I sat there for an hour. The frozen peas in my grocery bag melted into a puddle on the floor. I watched the water spread across the white oak, darkening the wood. Finally, I picked up my phone. I called Maya. They sued me. I said, I know. Maya said, her voice was sharp, efficient. I just got the notification from the docket. Trent Voss filed it an hour ago. They lied under oath. Maya, they signed affidavits saying I gave them keys. Good. Maya said. Good? I asked. How is that good? Because perjury is impeachable, Maya said. If we can prove they lied, we don't just win the lawsuit, we destroy their credibility forever. Sarah, listen to me. This is the moment they overplayed their hand. They think this is a shakedown. They think you will be so terrified of a public trial that you will settle. They think you will write Chloe a check for $50,000 just to make it go away. Is that what they want? Money? Of course. Voss is a settlement factory. He doesn't go to trial. He churns out demand letters and takes 30% of the payout. He is betting that you are soft. I looked at the water on the floor. I am not soft. I said, then let's prove it. Maya said, I am coming over. We spent the night in my living room, turning it into a war room. Maya paced the floor, dictating notes into her phone, while I organized the documents. We are going to subpoena everything, Maya said. We are going to ask for Chloe's text messages. We are going to ask for her bank records. We are going to depose your parents, and we are going to file a motion to dismiss based on the statute of frauds. But I want to drag this out just enough to get their lies on the record. My phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. Answer it, Maya said. Put it on speaker. I answered. This is Sarah. Miss Butler. This is Trent Voss. His voice was like oiled leather, smooth, rich, and fake. Mr. Voss. I said, I have counsel. You should be calling her. Oh, I will. I will. Voss chuckled. I just wanted to reach out. Courtesy to courtesy. Look, Sarah. Can I call you Sarah? Nobody wants a messy court battle. Your sister is a mess. Your parents are distraught. This lawsuit, it is public record. Reporters look at these filings. Do you really want the details of your family drama on the front page of the Harborview Gazette? Are you threatening me? I asked. No, just reality testing. We are prepared to discuss your history, the instability, the mood swings. We have witnesses who can testify about your behavior growing up. It would be a shame if your employers at Crestline Advisory heard about all that. I looked at Maya. She made a slashing motion across her throat. If you have something to say, put it in a pleading. Mr. Voss, I said. Click. He is trying to scare you. Maya said, he has nothing. He has my parents. I said, and they are willing to say anything. The next day, I went to see Nolan Pierce again. He looked different this time, less like a detached observer, more like a hunter who had caught a scent. He laid a single piece of paper on his desk. The loan, he said, the $150,000 they took out in your name 10 years ago. I nodded. I know. They said they used it for bills. They lied. Nolan said, I looked at him. What do you mean? I traced the disbursement. Nolan said, it went into your father's primary checking account, but 3 days later, a cashier's check was issued for $120,000. To who? I asked. To the Glen Ridge Country Club. Nolan said, I stared at him. The country club? Specifically, for the Platinum Founders initiation fee. Nolan said, it is a lifetime membership that comes with a plaque in the lobby and naming rights for the annual charity gala. I felt the room spin. They didn't use my credit to save the house. They didn't use it to buy food. They used it to buy status. That year. I remembered that year. It was the year my mother was elected president of the Garden Club. It was the year they threw a massive anniversary party. Everyone in Glen Ridge talked about how well the Butlers were doing. They bought their reputation with my stolen identity. And the rest? I asked. The other 30,000? A lease on a Mercedes. Nolan said. For Diane. I sat back in the leather chair. I felt sick. Physically sick. For 10 years. I had carried a vague, low-level guilt that I hadn't done enough to help them. I thought they were drowning in medical bills or bad luck. But they weren't drowning. They were partying. They stole my financial future to buy a plaque on a wall. I stood up. Thank you. Nolan, Sarah. Nolan said gently. What are you going to do? I am going to end it. I said. I drove home. I called Maya. I have a plan. I said, I don't like the sound of that. Maya said, you said they want a settlement. I said, you said they think I am soft. Yes. So let's give them what they want. Or at least, let's make them think we are giving them what they want. I outlined the plan. Maya listened. She argued. She told me it was risky. She told me that if I messed up the phrasing, I could accidentally admit liability. But in the end, she agreed. Because she saw what I saw. The only way to stop a liar is to let them lie so much they trap themselves. I sent the invitation via email. I copied Trent Voss. Subject, settlement discussion. Dear Mom, Dad, and Chloe, I am tired of fighting. The lawsuit has made me realize that family is more important than property. I want to resolve this. Please come to the Penthouse tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. I want to discuss a settlement agreement that gives Chloe what she needs and ends this legal battle. Note, per the advice of my counsel, this meeting will be documented for legal clarity. Your attendance constitutes consent to these terms. It was the bait, the surrender. They replied within 10 minutes. We are so glad you came to your senses. Sarah, we love you. See you at 7. The next evening, I staged the apartment. I moved the sharp, modern sculptures off the coffee table. I replaced them with a vase of soft, white hydrangeas. I put a framed photo of the four of us, taken 10 years ago, ironically at the country club, on the sidebar. I set out a tea service, Earl Grey. My mother's favorite. And in the center of the coffee table, I placed a thick blue folder. I used a label maker to print the word agreement on the front in large. Capital letters. Inside the folder was not a check. Inside the folder was my life's work. At 6:30, Maya arrived. She was not wearing her power suit. She was wearing jeans and a sweater. She went into the guest bedroom, closing the door until it was just a crack ajar. Nolan arrived 5 minutes later. He went into the study, and then the most important guest arrived. Her name was Brenda. She was a certified court reporter, a small woman with glasses and a steno machine that looked like a futuristic typewriter. I put her in the dining alcove, behind a decorative Japanese screen. She was not hidden, exactly. If you walked over there, you would see her, but she was out of the direct line of sight from the living room. "Are you ready?" I asked her. She nodded. "Ready on the record, Miss Butler." I took a deep breath. I smoothed my skirt. I checked the camera in the foyer. They were here. When I opened the door, the air was thick with triumph. Diane walked in first. She was wearing a new scarf. She looked radiant. She looked like a woman who had just won the lottery. "Sarah." "Honey," she exclaimed, reaching out to hug me. "I knew you would do the right thing." I let her hug me. Her body felt stiff, artificial. "Hi, Mom," Mark followed, clapping me on the shoulder. "Proud of you, kiddo. Takes a big person to admit when they are wrong." And then Chloe, she walked in with a smirk she couldn't quite suppress. She looked at the apartment like she was measuring for curtains. "Hey, sis," she said. "Come in." I said, "Sit down." They walked into the living room. They saw the flowers. They saw the photo. They saw the tea. And they saw the blue folder labeled agreement. Their eyes locked onto it like magnets. Diane sat on the sofa. Mark sat next to her. Chloe took the armchair. I poured the tea. My hands were steady. "So," Diane said, blowing on her tea, "what are we discussing? A lump sum? Or is Chloe moving in?" I sat on the ottoman, facing them. I kept my posture small, submissive. "I want to make sure we are all on the same page," I said softly. "Before we sign anything, I just need to understand why it had to go this far." Diane sighed. "Oh, Sarah, don't be dramatic. It was just a little push. You were being stubborn. But the lawsuit," I said, "the affidavits. You said I promised Chloe the room." Diane waved her hand. "Well, you did, didn't you? In your heart? You know it is the right thing to do. But I never actually said the words." "Did I?" I asked. "I never actually gave you the keys." Mark chuckled. He reached for a cookie. "Details. Sarah, the point is, you led her on. You let her believe she had a home. That is what matters." I looked at Mark. "And the loan? Dad? The one from 10 years ago?" Mark stiffened. "Why are we bringing that up?" "I just need to know." I said, "For my own peace of mind, if I am going to pay for Chloe now, I just need to know that the money back then really went to the house, that it was for survival." Mark looked at Diane. Diane nodded imperceptibly. "Of course it was." Mark said, "It kept the lights on." "Sarah, we were desperate. We did it to put food on the table. And you signed my name because you had no choice?" "We had no choice," Diane said firmly. "We were protecting you from the burden." I nodded. "And the residency?" I asked Chloe. "The letter from the tenant advocacy group? You told them you lived here?" Chloe shrugged. My advisor, said it was standard procedure. We had to establish a baseline, so you told them you lived here, even though you didn't? "I practically lived here in spirit," Chloe said. "Mom said it was mine." I looked at them. They were comfortable. They were eating my cookies. They were lying to my face, casually, effortlessly, rewriting history to justify their greed. I felt a final, severing snap in my chest. The last thread of attachment broke. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" Diane asked. "For clarifying." I said. I stood up. I walked over to the Japanese screen in the dining alcove. I folded it back. Brenda sat there, her hands hovering over the steno keys. The machine made a soft clack-clack sound. "Who is that?" Diane asked, her voice rising. This is Brenda, I said. She is a certified court reporter. Diane stood up. What is she doing here? She is transcribing this meeting. I said, as I stated in the invitation, this meeting is being documented, under state law. Your attendance after receiving notice constitutes consent. Diane looked at Brenda. She looked at me. Why? She demanded. Why do you need a transcript to give us money? I walked back to the coffee table. I am not giving you money. Mom. I picked up the blue folder. Chloe's eyes widened. She lunged for it. Give me that, she screamed. That is the agreement. I pulled it out of her reach. No, Chloe, this is not an agreement. I opened the folder. I dumped the contents onto the coffee table. Photos slid out. Screenshots of text messages, bank records, a copy of the forged deed, a printout of the country club membership roster with Diane's name highlighted, a timeline of Chloe's Lux Life scams, a report linking Evan Ridge to the concierge. What is this? Mark whispered. This is the truth. I said, I picked up a document. This is the transcript of what you just said. I said, you admitted you never had keys. You admitted the loan was forged. You admitted you lied on the affidavits. I picked up another document, and this, I said, looking at Diane, is the receipt for the Platinum Founders initiation fee at Glenridge Country Club, dated 3 days after you stole my identity. Diane's face went from red to a pale, ghostly white. You told me you were starving. I said, you told me you did it for food. You did it for a plaque. Mom, you committed a felony so you could feel important at a cocktail party. Diane began to shake. And this, I said, pointing to a stack of papers, is the breakdown of Chloe's business, the $80,000 she defrauded from buyers, the connection to Evan Ridge, a known con artist. I looked at Chloe. He is playing you. Chloe, he is using you to get to me, and you are letting him. Chloe stood up. She looked at the papers. She looked at me. You investigated us? She stammered. I defended myself. I said, Diane let out a sound that was half scream, half growl. She lunged at me, not at the folder, at me. You ungrateful little bitch, she screamed. Mark grabbed her arm. Diane, stop. She struggled against him. Her face twisted into a mask of pure hate. After everything I sacrificed, she shrieked. I gave up my life for you. I raised you. I put clothes on your back. You owe me. The words hung in the air. You owe me. It was not about love. It never had been. It was about debt. In her mind, my existence was a loan she had taken out, and she was entitled to collect interest for the rest of my life, because I was the stable one. She hissed, pulling away from Mark, because you were the boring one. Chloe needed help. Chloe needed attention. You were fine. You were always fine. You didn't need us. I looked at her. I did need you, I said softly. I needed a mother. I didn't have time to be a mother to a robot. She spat. You were cold from the day you were born. You sat in your room and read your books and judged us. You judged our spending. You judged our lives. You think you are better than us because you have money? You are nothing. You are a bank account. That is all you are to this family. A bank account. The silence that followed was absolute. Brenda's machine clacked softly. Mark looked horrified. He looked at Brenda. He realized what had just gone on the record. Diane, shut up, he whispered. But Diane was past caring. She was breathing hard, staring at me with a look of pure loathing. There it was, the core truth. She didn't hate me because I wouldn't help. She hated me because I was the mirror that showed her who she really was. She hated me because I was the one thing she couldn't control. I looked at the folder on the table. Maya stepped out of the guest room. Nolan stepped out of the study. Diane looked around. She realized she was surrounded. This meeting is over. I said, I looked at the blue folder. You wanted a settlement. I said, here it is. I handed a single sheet of paper to Mark. This is a formal offer. I said, I will not sue you for the $150,000 you stole. I will not press criminal charges for the identity theft, and I will not publish this transcript. Mark looked at the paper. His hands were shaking. On one condition, I said, you withdraw the lawsuit with prejudice. You sign a confession of judgment admitting to the fraud, which I will hold in a safe and only file if you ever contact me again, and you vacate the Glen Ridge house and list it for sale immediately to pay off your own debts before the bank takes it. We can't sell the house, Diane screamed. Where will we go? That is not my problem, I said. I looked at Chloe. And you? I said, you are going to sign a statement recanting your lies about the residency, and you are going to stay away from Evan Ridge, because if you don't, I will hand his file to the FBI. He has active warrants. Chloe, if you are with him when he goes down, you go down too. Chloe looked at the floor. She looked small. Get out, I said. Diane straightened her scarf. She tried to regain her dignity, but it was in shreds. You will die alone. Sarah, she said, and when you do, no one will cry. I walked to the door and held it open. Maybe, I said, but I will die free. They walked out. Diane first, head high, refusing to look at me. Chloe second, sniffling. Mark last. He stopped at the door. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. I'm sorry, Sarah, he whispered. I looked at him. No, you're not. Dad, I said, you're just sorry you got caught. I closed the door. I locked it. I leaned against the heavy wood. Maya walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. We got it, she said. We got it all. I looked at the empty room. The tea was cold. The flowers were still perfect. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was hot and fast. I am an orphan, I whispered. Maya pulled me into a hug. No, she said. You are a survivor. I stood there in the silence of my penthouse, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the wind against the glass. I had won. I had the evidence. I had the leverage. But as I looked at the family photo on the sidebar, the one where we were all smiling, the one taken with stolen money, I realized that the cost of victory was everything I had ever claimed to want. I had my home, but I had lost my history. I wiped my face. It was a fair trade. The silence in the penthouse was not empty. It was heavy, vibrating with the energy of a bomb that had been diffused but was still ticking. My family stood near the foyer, their exit halted by the sheer gravity of what had just happened. They had not left, not yet. In my previous narration, I said I closed the door. In my mind, I had shut the door on the emotional connection, on the daughter I used to be. But physically, they were still standing on my white oak floors, paralyzed by the sudden shift in power. Mark was staring at the single sheet of paper I had handed him. The offer. Diane was trembling, her face a mask of fractured porcelain. Chloe was looking between them, waiting for someone to fix the reality she had broken. I walked back to the coffee table. The blue folder lay there, gutted, its contents spilled like entrails. I am not done, I said. My voice was quiet, but in the acoustic perfection of the penthouse, it carried like a gunshot. I picked up 3 thick, white envelopes. They were sealed with red wax. I had prepared them with Maya earlier that afternoon. They were not invitations. They were sentences. I walked over to them. I did not flinch. I handed the first one to my father. This is for you, I said. He took it. His hands were shaking so bad the paper rattled. What is it? He whispered. It is a formal notice of intent to file charges for wire fraud and identity theft. I said, along with a copy of the forensic accounting report tracing the loan proceeds to the country club. I handed the second one to Diane. This is a cease and desist order regarding your communication with my employer, I said, and a defamation warning. If you send one more email, one more text, or make one more phone call to Crestline Advisory, we will file a restraining order that bars you from coming within 500 feet of my office or my home. Diane took the envelope. She held it like it was burning her skin. And this, I said. Turning to Chloe, I held out the third packet. Chloe did not take it. She crossed her arms. jutting out her chin in a petulant display of defiance. "Take it," I said. "I don't want your trash." She spat. "It is a notice of trespass," I said, "and a copy of the affidavit from the building management confirming that the document you presented to the movers was a forgery. It also contains a printout of the active warrants for Evan Ridge." Chloe's eyes flickered. "I suggest you read it," I continued, "because it explains that if you are found on this property again, you will be arrested." Not escorted out. Arrested. I dropped the packet at her feet. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. "Now," I said, "we are going to finish this." Mark finally looked up from the paper in his hands. His face was gray. The bluster, the charm, the fatherly condescension, it was all gone. He looked like a man who had woken up in a burning house. "Sarah," he said. His voice cracked. "Please, you cannot do this. I am not doing anything." "Dad," I said, "you did this. You signed the papers. You spent the money. You don't understand." He pleaded. He took a step toward me. "We are not just behind on the mortgage. We are underwater." I looked at him. "How bad is it?" I asked. Mark looked at Diane. Diane refused to meet his eyes. She was staring at the wall, her jaw set in a rigid line. "The foreclosure notice came yesterday," Mark whispered. "They are auctioning the house in 30 days. 30 days. I repeated. We have nowhere to go. Sarah, the credit cards are maxed out. The car is leased. We have no savings. If we lose the house, we are on the street." He began to cry. It was not the performative crying of my sister. It was the ugly, jagged weeping of a man who realizes he has ruined his life. I looked at him, and I felt a strange detachment. 10 years ago. Seeing my father cry would have broken me. I would have emptied my savings account to fix it. I would have taken a second job. I would have set myself on fire to keep him warm. But now, all I saw was a man who had stolen my name to buy a country club membership. I'm sorry to hear that. I said, "Sarah, please." Mark begged. He reached out to grab my hand, but I stepped back. "Just let Chloe stay here, just for a month, just so we can focus on packing. If she is here, we don't have to worry about her rent. We can use that money to fight the bank." "You don't have money to fight the bank." I said, "You just admitted you are broke. We can figure it out," he insisted. "We always figure it out. If she hurts herself, it is on your hands." I watched them. The tableau was so familiar it was boring. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I dialed 3 numbers. 911. "What are you doing?" Diane demanded. "I am calling the paramedics," I said calmly. I held the phone up so they could see the screen. "If Chloe is a danger to herself, she needs professional medical intervention. I am requesting an ambulance and a psychiatric hold. They will take her to Harborview General for a 72-hour observation." Chloe's head snapped up. The tears vanished instantly. "Don't you dare!" she hissed. I did not lower the phone. "Are you having a medical emergency?" "Chloe?" I asked. "Or are you manipulating me?" Chloe stared at me. She saw the resolve in my eyes. She knew I would make the call. She knew that a 72-hour hold would mean no phone, no Evan Ridge, and a permanent record. She stood up. She smoothed her dress. "You are a psycho," she said. Her voice was cold, flat, and entirely stable. I lowered the phone. "I am not the one pretending to be suicidal to get a bedroom," I said. Chloe laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. "You think you have won, don't you?" she said. "You think because you have your little folder and your lawyer that you are safe?" She took a step toward me. "I know things. Sarah, I know what you were like in high school. I know about the time you wet the bed until you were 12. I know about how you used to pull your hair out. I know every embarrassing, pathetic detail of your life." She smiled. "And I have a lot of followers. Maybe I will do a story time. Growing up with a monster, I will tell everyone how you tormented me, how you were jealous, how you are a cold, unfeeling robot who hates her family." I looked at her. This was the threat that had kept me silent for years. The fear of being exposed, the fear of being seen as the bad daughter. But as I looked at her, This 30-year-old woman who had never taken responsibility for a single action in her life, I realized something. I didn't care. Tell them. I said. Chloe blinked. What? Tell them. I repeated. Make the video. Write the post. Go live right now. I took a step closer to her. I am done being edited. Chloe, I am done trying to curate a version of myself that protects your reputation. I pointed to the blue folder on the table, because for every story you tell, I have a receipt. You want to talk about my childhood? Let's talk about yours. Let's talk about the $50,000 you stole from Dad. Let's talk about the fake handbags. Let's talk about the court records. I looked at Diane. And let's talk about the identity theft. I turned back to Chloe. Go ahead. Destroy my reputation. But remember, I have already spoken to HR. I have already spoken to the police. I have already secured my job. The only person you will be destroying is yourself. Chloe opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked at Diane, waiting for backup. Diane stepped forward. She was not crying. She was not begging. She was seething. She walked past me. She walked past Mark. She walked toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms. Where are you going? I asked. I have a right to see it, she said. Her voice was tight. See what? The room, she said. The room where my daughter would have stayed. I want to see what you are keeping from us. I want to see the luxury you are hoarding. She was invading. Even in defeat, she felt entitled to my space. She wanted to walk into my sanctuary, touch my things, and leave her energy on my pillows. She wanted to violate the boundary one last time. I felt a surge of adrenaline. Diane put her hand on the wall of the hallway. No, I said. She ignored me. She kept walking. I ran. I moved faster than I had moved in years. I stepped in front of her, blocking the hallway. No! I screamed. The sound tore out of my throat. It was primal. It was loud. It echoed off the glass walls and the high ceilings. Diane stopped. She stumbled back, shocked. I had never raised my voice to her, not once. I was the quiet one, the good one. Get back, I said. My chest was heaving. You do not go in there. You do not touch my things. You do not look at my bed. This is my home, mine. You have no rights here. Diane stared at me. Her eyes were wide. For the first time, she looked at me not as an extension of herself, but as a stranger, a dangerous stranger. You, she stammered, you screamed at your mother. I am not screaming at my mother, I said, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. I am screaming at a trespasser. Suddenly, the front door opened. Maya walked in. She had been waiting in the hallway, listening. She held her phone in her hand. Mrs. Butler, Maya said. Her voice was professional, crisp, and terrifying. Diane spun around. Who are you? I am Sarah's attorney, Maya said, and you are currently trespassing. Sarah has revoked your license to be on this property. Maya held up her phone. I have recorded your refusal to leave. I have recorded your attempt to enter private areas of the residence against the owner's express command. Maya walked over to stand beside me. We stood shoulder to shoulder, the lawyer and the client, the shield and the sword. If you do not vacate this apartment in 2 minutes, Maya said, checking her watch, I will call the police to enforce the removal. And given the evidence in that folder, I don't think you want the police looking too closely at this family right now. Diane looked at Maya. She looked at Mark. She looked at Chloe. She realized the room was no longer hers to control. The dynamic had shifted. This was not a family kitchen where she could guilt-trip us into submission. This was a legal arena. Mark wiped his eyes. Diane, let's go, he said softly. No, Diane said. We have nowhere to go. I looked at them. I saw the desperation. I saw the fear. And despite everything, despite the fraud, the lies, the manipulation, I felt a pang of pity, not love, pity. They were pathetic. I took a deep breath. I have one final offer, I said. They all looked at me. I will pay for a short-term rental. I said. Chloe's face lit up. See? I knew it. I knew you would crack. Not for you. I said, I looked at Mark. I will pay for a 2-bedroom apartment for Mom and Dad. For 3 months. Prepaid. It will be modest. It will be clean. It will give you time to sell the Glenridge house and salvage whatever equity is left to pay off your debts. Mark let out a breath. Oh, thank God. Sarah, thank you. But there are conditions. I said. I held up 3 fingers. 1, you withdraw the lawsuit immediately and sign the confession of judgment regarding the identity theft. 2, you list the house for sale by Monday. 3, Chloe does not live there. The room went silent. What? Chloe whispered. The rental is for Mark and Diane Butler. I said, the lease will be in my name. The occupancy limit will be 2 people. If Chloe spends a single night there, I cancel the lease and you are all evicted. But where will I go? Chloe asked. Her voice was small. I don't know. I said, you are 30 years old. You have a business. You have a boyfriend. Figure it out. You can't separate us, Diane cried. She needs me. She needs to grow up. Mom, I said, and you need to stop enabling her. I looked at Mark. That is the deal. Dad, 3 months of housing for you and Mom, or nothing, and I file the fraud charges tomorrow. Mark looked at Chloe. He looked at Diane. He looked at the foreclosure notice in his mind. We take it, Mark whispered. Mark, Diane shouted. You can't. We have to. Diane, Mark yelled back. His voice was cracked and desperate. We have to. We are drowning. He looked at me. I accept. Sarah, we accept. I nodded. I will have Maya draw up the paperwork tomorrow. Diane stared at me. Her face was cold. Hard stone. I don't know you, she whispered. Good. I said. Chloe laughed. It was a dry, rattling sound. Wow. She said, you are really doing it. You are buying them off. You are buying silence. I looked at her. I looked at the sister I had tried to protect for my entire life. The sister who had tried to steal my home. No, Chloe, I said. I walked to the door and opened it wide. I am not buying silence. I am buying my life back. Leave. Chloe grabbed her purse. She marched out, her heels clicking on the floor. She did not look back. Diane followed. She stopped in front of me. She looked at my face, searching for a crack, a tear, a sign of weakness. She found none. She walked out. Mark was the last. He stopped. He looked at the blue folder on the table. He looked at the packet in his hand. He looked at me. He opened his mouth to say something. Perhaps I love you. Perhaps I'm sorry. Perhaps you owe me. Don't, I said. He nodded. He walked out. I watched them walk down the hallway to the elevators. I watched Mark press the button. I watched the silver doors slide open. They stepped inside. They turned around. For a moment, as the doors began to close, we looked at each other, a family portrait framed in steel. The doors shut. I locked the front door. I threw the deadbolt. I engaged the secondary lock. I turned around. Maya was standing by the window. She didn't say anything. She just nodded. I walked to the center of the living room. I looked at the white oak floors. I looked at the view of the harbor, the lights of the city blinking like diamonds. It was quiet. It was the silence I had bought. It was the silence I had fought for. My legs gave out. I sank to the floor. I didn't sit on the couch. I sat right on the hardwood, pulling my knees to my chest. I started to shake. Violent, racking tremors that started in my hands and took over my whole body. I wasn't crying. I was vibrating. It was over. The lawsuit, the fraud, the invasion, the lifetime of being the fixer, the bank, the emotional punching bag. It was all gone. But so was the illusion, the fantasy that one day, if I was just good enough, if I was just successful enough, they would see me. They would love me. They didn't love me. They loved what I could provide, and when I stopped providing, they tried to destroy me. I felt a wave of grief so heavy it almost crushed me. I grieved the parents I never had. I grieved the sister I couldn't save. But then, I took a breath. The air in the penthouse was cool and clean. It didn't smell of old potpourri and desperation. It smelled of the ocean. I looked at the blue folder on the table, the evidence of my victory. I had chosen myself. For 33 years, I had been Sarah the daughter, Sarah the sister, Sarah the fixer. Tonight, sitting on the floor of the home I had defended, I was just Sarah. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Sarah's journey from being the fixer to finding her own strength was an intense one to write, and I hope you felt the weight of her victory. I would love to know where you are listening from. Please drop your city or country in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice and family drama. What did you think of Sarah's final choice? Did she do the right thing by helping her parents but cutting off Chloe? Share your thoughts in English in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you for your support.